Capitol, come to the table, please. Guys, let's get ready. Let's start. I turned it on. I didn't think anyone heard it. Testing, testing. Okay.
We're staying on a tight schedule.
Good morning, everyone. Testing, testing. Does that sound like that's on to you? Sorry.
Nope, we're ready.
Okay. I'm not sure. Can people hear me?
Not really.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know how to turn it up, Joe. I know how to raise the roof though. You knew that was coming, didn't you? As soon as I looked at you, you were like, she's gonna say it.
Yeah.
Seat 10 has a hand up.
Oh. Okay, seat 10.
Yeah, there.
Oh, okay, why don't you, can somebody turn that off?
It's not on.
Okay, great.
You activate
You have to
Just the
turn it
mic.
on.
Okay.
I just thought. it was
I know,
funny.
we're getting back into the swing of the new microphones. Okay, let's call this meeting of the Capital Improvements and IT Committee to order at 10:01 a.m. Member Berkowitz, would you like to lead us in the pledge today?
Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America. And
to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Can we have a roll call, please?
Parker. Berkowitz. Butler. Coleman. Richmond.
Here.
Van Dyne.
Here.
Mueller.
Here.
We have a quorum.
And note, Mr. Butler, Member Butler entered the room.
Sorry.
You're okay. We had just done roll call and your name was just called, so I wanted to make sure they didn't miss you.
I was distracted by leadership.
It happens. Great. Moving on. Oh, we have a quorum. Okay. I need a motion to approve the minutes for May 7th, 2024's meeting.
Motion.
Second.
Wonderful. Can we have a roll call? please?
Berkowitz.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
Richmond.
Yes.
Van Dyne.
Yes.
Mueller.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Wonderful. Moving on, we have old business. Looking at number one is the facilities update. Mr. Fern, would you like to come up and give us your report?
Certainly.
Thank you.
How was everybody day?
Great. How about
Is
you?
this one on? Is that,
Yeah, it's.
can't,
red.
I don't have stereo anymore, so,
Oh. Go ahead.
well, we'll run through the slideshow, if you don't mind.
Great.
We've got I'm sure everybody's been downtown at this point and seen the giant hole we've got. We're down below foundation grade and we're waiting for the clean fill, which is compacted clay and stone to build a foundation on. With this last rain we had, the clay was too wet to move. So they're waiting. That's why there's been no activity for the last 2 days.
Can we,
However you want to do it.
oh, go ahead, Julie. Turn on your microphone, Julie.
Oh, can I do that like
Mhm. And go ahead.
It's.
I pushed it. I'm sorry. I pushed next on and it didn't, I must have bumped it wrong.
Bill, you see the first picture that, go the one before this. I guess it would be page 3. Or the next one, page 2. So I couldn't enlarge it, could barely see it on my Chromebook, but you see that it looks like a grid standing up. I was just curious what that is and,
That's one of the buckets. I believe
Okay.
that's the back end of one of the buckets.
okay, so that's
The
part of the
equipment bucket.
equipment.
Mhm.
Okay, Thank you.
Okay.
That's all I had.
I want to make sure you clarified what a bucket was in that world, because it's not what a bucket is in most worlds, so.
So this is all still static from way in the beginning of time with the demo, and we're still anticipating the end of the month. End of July for the actual demo site to be completed.
And when you say finished, you mean with the fill and the
Fill
grass over?
and seeded, correct.
Seeded, not
Yep.
grass.
All the front half of the plaza to be cleaned up and all the debris removed. There's a little bit of dirt that comes out, it's a little bit of dust and things of that nature.
Okay.
It should be all clean and usable in the plaza, like it's open since the Memorial date. And then be seeded, and we'll keep a fence up around it until the seeding takes hold.
Right.
And we'll assess it as we go of how much traffic it'll take. Because there's always settling when you've got fresh fill and then blacktop and seed mat. So it'll be an ongoing process with that space.
Are we still on budget for all of this?
Absolutely.
Are we under budget for all of this?
I'm sorry.
Are we under budget for all of this? We don't know
I
yet.
think, I honestly think there's a little room left at this point. I think there is. I don't have the
Right.
budget number.
No, that's okay. I just. thought
And
I
then
should
the
ask.
ADF here, that, you know, we've been working on the masonry as well as the roof. Next slide will show, we're into the very last section, which is over their data, camera and security system area. So we are being very delicate in that area. It needed more repair. So we've got to be very careful. There's a lot of ventilation there that has to have extended whips and be raised to put the roof down.
That's a considerable amount since
So we
last
are in
month.
completion phase, actually. These are the
Great.
different applications that we've seen that we've shown throughout, where we've got the brand new insulation and then the different kinds of adhesive that go down before the roof goes down. And all the rock and ballast has been removed. So this roof is a non-ballasted roof, which is much nicer for facility side of it. And for the security, when they walk the roof, if there's anything that's been thrown up there that could be harmful, they can see it. It's not mixed in with the gravel and the rock.
Right, right. That's great. I was just, can I not do next on seat 13, member trainee, leader trainier?
Thank you very much, Chair.
I'm getting there.
On slide number 6, it shows the masonry, and maybe this is how it's always been, or maybe this is just the repair. I don't know. But are we gonna make those things match?
Yep, go further.
Okay.
Go a few slides into it. These were test areas
Ah,
because some of the masonry, see, this is the finished product on a roof. We got a little bit ahead of ourselves with the masonry. But this is the raising and the flashing that's got to happen on the area over the computer room.
sure.
So it's a little more delicate. So this is why we're into that last section, but we're looking for completion really soon.
Yeah, I saw on slide 11.
Here you
where
go. Now
have
here's the
tuck
masonry.
point. But I don't know that that's that same section of the building. and-
There is 4 or 5 different sections that the tuck pointing was so bad you could stick your hand in. And there was one section where you could actually
Sorry.
see into the interior of the building.
Wow,
so-
easy to break out?
There's 2
I'm
courses of
trying
brick, I
not to
would
let my
say that.
mind go with what the possibilities are.
So on the areas you see on the lower level where they tried different types of sealants to see what the color match was, those were test areas. But this here on the right is finished product.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yep, absolutely. That would look terrible if it was patched like
Yeah,
that
I
around.
mean,
Yeah.
even the photo there on the left, you can see at the top of that roof line where the concrete's a different color and I
Mhm.
just, is that like just the rain, the acid rain or whatever?
When it's, well, that's the coping that causes the color change.
Yeah.
But don't
that's
forget,
what
a
I
lot of that brick, that split face brick gets mold in it
Yeah.
Mhm.
if it doesn't get the right sunlight to kill
Right.
it.
No, same
So-
thing happens on
I know,
houses.
e-
I mean,
everywhere.
You see the green growing all over in my
Abs-
neighborhood on the vinyl siding.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
I know it's hard to match out exterior. It's hard to get
Yep.
colors to always match.
So this slide is still correct for timeframes and money.
Great. Steve, you have your light on. Did you have a question?
No,
Oh.
I don't know why.
Okay, I didn't want to
Well,
leave you
that's
out.
when All the red lights were on.
Way to go, Joe.
Sunny Hill domestic hot water replacement. We are still amassing the parts needed and would probably start in the next 2 weeks. And we'll be done probably into September, even though we've got a year to finish it. There'll be no delay or hardship on the residents of Sunny Hill. We will build these systems side by side and then do a cutover in the middle of the evening when everybody's asleep. So they won't know that they've got a brand new system. And we're looking for huge savings on gas and electric with these new systems. And this is funded by grant money, not county money from our R&E, from Brianna and Dave Harkey.
Great.
Again, I'm not going to read them all, but you can take a quick peruse. We could probably do 4 pages like this a week compared to, once a month. So we pick out the ones that stand out or are a little more prevalent in what we've done. One of the exciting ones we've been working on for a couple of months is the new courthouse is getting a Channel 9 weather bug camera on the corner of it that'll look down to the veterans area along the river and it'll pick up 2 of the bridges. So you'll be on Channel 9 almost every morning with
Aren't we?
instead of just time from Joliet, you'll actually have a camera. And we started this before Tom Skilling retired, and we were promised a visit, and it took too long for the components to get here.
We can still try to get Tom.
Tom's not coming.
Really?
He splits his time between Hawaii and
I know.
Yep, and Alaska now. So these are just a couple of
Alaska,
pictures from the Law Enforcement Memorial.
right off the continent.
It was a great event. Weather was terrible and it stopped. We got the memorial in and then it got terrible again after the memorial. But you can see how good it looks. We moved the fence back, cleaned up the plaza, and put some fresh plantings in right before.
It's really nice. Okay. Any questions about, oh, Micah has a question. Come on up, Micah. Push the button and I'll actually just pull that microphone over towards you. There we go. Good morning.
I am curious, you had over 800 work, oh gosh, I can't even, I just walked away from it.
Work
Work orders.
Yep.
And I'm just curious, that's a lot.
That's countywide.
What's the worst to the least? I mean, is it like my,
A light bulb out or a 2-inch supply line that's leaking, domestic cold water.
okay,
So they arrange that, and we've tried to break it down to, instead of calling a contractor, what the in-house facilities team per hour on a repair like that. And we're averaging about $25 an hour to repair it in-house. So, and those numbers are gonna go up exponentially because right now we're not tracking everything. We're switching over from the Hippo system to, it's called Aptura. They're a company that bought Hippo. Nothing will change for the end user when you go to put a work request in, but it'll be a new logo. And I'm working with Jason. We're gonna try and do this. We'll make an announcement. It'll come from Mike Theodore. It'll go to everybody's inbox. That when you go to the intranet, place a work request, email what building you're in, what office you're in, what your request is, and then it'll give you a scale of, is it red hot emergency right now? You need somebody to come directly now, or can it wait till morning? Those type of things. And then it goes to the management team and we assign it to the team and they get on it each day. We print out. A lot of times now what we're doing is this new system allows us to go right to the phone. And part of the asset management we've been doing for the last year now with McKinstry is we're tagging all of our equipment. So when you get a work order, you take your phone, you can go right to the equipment, take a picture, it starts the clock, tells me you worked on it for 2 hours, finished the work order, push a button, we're done. Instead of the guys killing an hour at the end of the day, having to go sit at a desktop and type in what they finished, they can do it all on their smartphone. So we're upgrading that whole end of it. So those numbers will change in the next 60 days to much higher.
Right. Sounds like
Faster.
it's getting just more efficient.
Absolutely,
Okay.
100% more efficient.
so do
Wonderful.
we keep most of those work orders in-house? How often do you have to call them out?
Depends on the scope, severity. Like we've had a couple of buildings now, just Sunday at Sunny Hill, we had a sewer line back up and the rotor got stuck in it. So we actually had to excavate the sunshine patio and dig 17 feet down to get the rotor out
The
of it.
patio we just
Yeah,
Oh my God.
fixed.
but we did it inside the dirt. We only lost 2 rows of papers.
Thank you. was
I was
just
gonna
curious.
try and add to this, but I didn't want to make it a last minute. We finished up last night. But it was a big deal. It was a
We can reuse those.
We can send them.
Can we reuse those pavers that had to be removed?
Absolutely, 100%.
Right. That's the nice part about
Landscapers there.
pavers.
We even saved the plants. We
Oh,
dug the
good.
rose bushes out by hand. We dug
So
the tiger
nice.
lilies out by hand, put them on the side, so.
Thank you. I was
Thanks
just
for
curious
saving the
about that.
plants.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see here. Any other questions for Mr. Fern while he's up here? Okay. Let's see, moving on. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to get back to my agenda here. Okay. I think that's it for that. Moving on to our next thing. Why does this keep doing this to me? Sorry, guys. We are looking at the update on the facility needs assessment. And I'm going to go ahead and let Mike Mahoney start out with what he wanted to share with us. I suspect this will tie into our next thing in new business anyway. So
It will.
go ahead.
So
are
in,
you on?
let's see, I think March or April, this committee passed out a resolution calling for a facility needs assessment and space needs assessment update. We have been kind of working diligently since then to get an idea of price point and what's the scope of what we're looking to do. With that, working with the county board staff and county board chair, we have found $250,000 that can be allocated to this. And so we are still meeting with some firms trying to get a real lockdown on price point and what we're looking for. But I expect by the second executive committee of this month, we should have something, I don't want to say totally finalized, but in place enough where we can share some details with you as to how we're looking to move forward with it. But it's been a really good process. And I think it's going to be very beneficial to the county to get this in place and kind of an update of what you're about to hear next in new business as well. So.
Great. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Mahoney while he's up here? You have your light on. You're number 4. Whoops. Mic on. Go for it. I got it.
So have you explored the option of using the company that is doing assessments on all the buildings, but I think they were limited in some areas?
We have,
Ooh,
There you go.
hold on,
and
hold on.
actually
Seat 9.
they work hand in hand. White
No.
and McKinstry work hand in hand on the facility assessment as well as the space needs assessment. And Jason will give you more on that in new business here. But yes, they work hand in hand, Dan.
Great, because I remembered that was going to be a somewhat of a cost savings if we use that same company.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mhm. Right, and they help us find more cost savings, so it's all about savings. Right? Let's see. Did you have anything else to share? I
it.
don't see any other microphones on. Okay. Great. Moving on.
Thank
We
you
don't
very
have
much.
any other old business right now, so let's go to new business, reviewing the master plan update from White and Company. This is Jason. He is from White and Company. He has worked with the county board for, I'm not sure when
15
that
years?
relationship started. Maybe Steve or Jackie can remind me because I was long before I was here.
Yeah, almost
Um,
15 years, yeah.
and White and Company was involved in our last needs assessment. And so Judy and I spoke with Jason and asked him if he would come in and just kind of give folks the overview and a presentation about what they've done for us and how they can help us with this facility needs assessment. And so go ahead, Jason. Yep, you're on. Go ahead.
Great, great. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces here. Yeah, we've been working with the county on a range of planning, design projects as you've worked to implement your master plan and take care of space needs that you've identified over the years. So what I thought I would do is just maybe give you a little bit of a background timeline history. I know some members are newer. So what you see up on the screen right here is kind of a timeline of how things started. So really 2009, we started doing space needs and facility conditions assessment. So that involved meeting with all judicial and county government functions to understand what kind of space needs they had, how their existing facilities were meeting those needs or not, general condition of each of the facilities, And the idea at that time was to look at it as about a 20-year plan for space needs. So we did projections for kind of what the current need was and then projecting out to the year 2030. So that completed right around 2010. From there, we started into an analysis of what were the priorities, which projects were most important, what needs were most urgent. Worked with the county board and key staff members to develop a prioritization list and a master plan essentially. So if you think about it in terms of identifying what all the needs are, we looked at a number of different scenarios that included renovations, new buildings, to come up with the best solution for addressing those needs, taking into account conditions of facilities and so forth. So I'll just give you one example of that. So the sheriff's public safety complex, one of the earlier projects that the county completed, there was a significant need for space. The conditions of the facilities were in really poor condition. So when we looked at options for coming up with a solution for that, developed a concept for a new public safety complex, then that project moved forward into an implementation phase. So master plan was done in 2011. Various milestones along the way, we looked at ancillary projects. The county had looked at potential of acquisition of buildings. So we did assessments of buildings that you could potentially acquire. We did a little deeper dive focused assessment on conditions at the health department's old building. That really led to that bumping up the priority list to do a new health department building, recognizing there were so many deficiencies with that building and just the amount of cost it would take to renovate a building that was outdated in terms of the operations. So a whole host of different studies along the way. One of the bigger projects that we were involved in the design on was the courthouse project. So as that project started to become higher on the priority list, funding was put together for how to execute that project. We started with a programming phase, which is kind of the next level of detail. Space needs being sort of bulk planning for square footage. Programming gets down into an assessment of every individual office and component within the building and is a precursor for designing a building. So from there, you moved into other planning and then an update to the master plan. And then I've kind of identified the blue dots there are implementation of projects. So if we could go to the next slide. I'll do a little bit deeper dive on this. So I talked a little bit about this already with the space needs and conditions assessment. So again, this is sort of the highest level evaluation of each of the different facilities. We talked to department heads and elected officials in every office, judicial and county government, to identify, what was most important, what were the needs going to be. And in this process, we're making projections. We used assessments like population projections. We looked at demographic trends. Certain office holders, population drives workload. Some of them are legislative issues or other workload issues like the judiciary, for example. There's some specific parameters around population that drives judges. Caseload obviously has a significant impact on the number of courtrooms, and the number of courtrooms drives a lot the other staff in the mix. So every department had its own specific workload indicators that would identify a need for specific staffing, which translates into a need for space. So next slide. So once we completed that, we ran a number of different scenarios to address the needs. And at the time in 2011, I kind of broke it down into sort of three major components for addressing space needs. First was core facilities. The idea of consolidating many of your core functions. So at that time, we were calling it the Justice Complex. So a new courthouse, continued renovation of the MCO building for expanded state's attorney needs over time. And then a longer term plan for dealing with the other agencies. Circuit court clerk was included in the new courthouse, but you had adult probation and public defender as well that needed to be identified. So we thought about that as kind of a core group, consolidating all the primary functions there. Then on the county government side, like you have now with the county office building, the idea of consolidating core functions, a lot of that's around ease of use for constituents and the public to know where to go, what services to be done. The next component was kind of focused on operation-specific facilities, we called it. So that's the sheriff's public safety complex. And a lot of this is with the exception of health department, a lot of it is focused at the Laraway site. There was already a strong footprint out there. Sheriff was out there, Department of Transportation. But the idea of continuing to develop these specific components, Sunny Hill Nursing Home was identified for renovation, a new animal control, EMA response center, coroner morgue facility. So those were very specific operational components, and knowing too that the DOT, for example, has other sort of satellite facilities to, position equipment where the work is being done. And then last was this notion of satellite facilities. So right now you already have satellite health department facilities, but there was talk at the time of the potential for long-term developing more sort of comprehensive, these would be like satellite outposts. So if you envision people that are coming to this building right now to get county government services, pay a tax bill or work with the supervisor of assessments on a senior freeze or something like that. The idea of potentially positioning some of those services at satellite facilities in the eastern part of the county and the northern part of the county, again, with a focus toward bringing services to where residents are and cutting down travel time. So that part wasn't the highest priority at the time, but it's part of the overall master plan. So next slide. As projects were being implemented, so, kind of between that 2011 to 2019, Sheriff's Public Safety Complex was completed, Sunny Hill renovation was completed. There was a initial work done, acquisition of a building and space for the Recorder of Deeds in the coroner's office. And then sort of an interim space for the Children's Advocacy Center. So all things that were sort of long-term projects and some stepping stone projects. Also at that time, the courthouse was underway, the main health department was underway, and so was animal control and EMA. So in discussions, we said, well, we've identified the needs, we've put together a plan, the county has implemented many of the projects. So we took that as a moment in time to sort of take stock of where things were, identify other components that other needs that had been unmet. So for example, there was always a long-term plan to consolidate the coroner's office with the morgue. The morgue was at a DOT facility, some probably know, and it just was not adequate for the operations. We've also looked at, there's still a need to address some ancillary judicial functions of adult probation and public defender. One's a lease space, and then ultimately the county office building. So in the update to the 2019 plan, there was a sort of a different thought about how to deal with the county office building. Originally in the 2011 plan, there was going to be a potential to renovate or rebuild on this site. But after some further discussion, there was a shift in thinking to move the county office building at such time that you would move forward with a new project, move it to the old courthouse site. So there's better adjacency with the judicial functions and just consolidation of facilities in kind of one primary region within downtown Joliet here. So, it's kind of a progression of planning, looking at the needs, looking at planning, implementing projects, and then revisiting the plan, taking into account any new issues, legislative changes, or things that came up that could impact space needs. So next slide. So kind of where we're at today, I mean, the county has implemented many of the identified projects in the master plan. So the projects on the left side are kind of some of the later ones to be done. I didn't put a picture in of the Children's Advocacy Center. That project was just completed, which is great. I think great new facility for that operation. And then on the right side of the slide, this kind of shows you a concept that was developed to consolidate county government functions just east of the new courthouse. You've got the surface parking lot just to the east of that, which is kind of nice in terms of convenience for the public. The other piece right now, the public defenders in a leased space, adult probation's in pretty tight, cramped space too. So the idea was to consolidate new space for those two entities as well, which is partly what drove some new thinking about placing the facility there, trying to do more comprehensive project and keep that nice adjacency for these ancillary judicial functions right next to the courthouse. So that's sort of the state of where things were left in terms of the last round of master planning. And then if you go to the next slide, So this is just a sort of a simple diagram of kind of the flow. And actually, I should turn that the four circles a little bit. Space needs generally leads into the master planning, which goes to programming, design, construction. So this is sort of a consistent cycle that we've worked with many counties on in terms of planning for the future, making sure you're set up for things that may come up. You have adequate space to provide space for staff and services. And then implementing projects with kind of a clear vision. What we find sometimes is that, you know, there's always stuff that's going to come up that's going to drive a change. And part of the goal of the master planning is to be ahead of that as much as possible, try to plan for space so that you don't find yourself in sort of a crisis situation where you're trying to deal with an issue in an emergency situation where you're limited in terms of your options. So I'm trying to think like, you know, COVID was an example of that. Some things that came up during COVID that people weren't anticipating. Some of the legislative changes with the Safety Act, another good example of things that maybe weren't foreseen 10 years ago, but may drive space needs. So part of the whole planning process is to just try to be ahead of that as much as possible. And just making sure that, you know, you're sort of checking with each of the different departments to make sure they have adequate space and that the needs are being met long-term. So I'll probably leave it at that and see if there's questions. But what I would say is, you know, you're at a point now where you've executed a number of projects. There's still a handful of groups within the whole of the county that needs have not been met long-term. The other thing is, as I was looking back on this, it's been 15 years now since we did the space needs analysis. So I think it's always a good idea to be looking at the departments. What are the operations? What are their needs? Things have changed even in just the last 3 to 4 years with a lot of the groups where there might be more or less need for space or staff. And then, you know, I know you've been actively working on conditions of buildings. That's always important to stay on top of the, you know, the conditions of the buildings. You know, you design and build these buildings, you want them to be 50 to 75-year assets, and that requires good ongoing maintenance to make that happen. So that's where the process comes together, looking at the physical conditions as well as the planning and space needs to really make sure you've got a great plan for the future. So thought it'd be good to just kind of give a little bit of the history of what's been done. And I think the county's at a good point now where a lot of things have been addressed, but there's still a handful of things that are out there, and be a good time to sort of take stock, even for some of the groups that have had their needs or maybe have a new facility, make sure things are working out the way they had planned. Any new things that came up operationally that might drive a change in what the needs are for the future. So that's kind of the whirlwind overview, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So you've all had the presentation. What I would love for anybody to ask their questions, what I want folks to think about is, I was hoping that we could move forward using White and McKinstry in partnership to help us do this space planning that we've been talking about. And that's something I've talked a little bit with our chair Judy about, and with Jennifer, the county executive, about. And they also thought that was a good way to move forward. Obviously, though, the committee makes that choice. Well, the board makes that choice. So we start here in the committee. Do you folks have any questions for Jason? I can see Julie does. Hold on. You're number 5. Mic on. Go for it.
Thanks, Jason, for coming in today. I wish I had heard this presentation like 6 months ago. I think it would have been very enlightening. Especially to see where that drawing of the complex came from. So I don't know if this question would be for you ultimately, but there would be a cost to this. And can you tell us what that approximate cost would be? And then my next question would be for staff. Does that have to go out for bid, or can we just select any consultant we want? So it's 2 questions there.
Well, let me start with the cost question. I can't today, because I think what we need to do is talk a little bit more about the exact scope of the services. I think, you know, the way our history has worked with the board and with staff here, I mean, we've been, as I said, working with the county for over 15 years. Historically, you know, because we've got kind of really good background knowledge in all the facilities, what's happened in the past is, as an issue came up like this, we would be asked to talk with the county executive's office to define what a scope of work might be, make sure we're clear on what the priorities are, what the needs are in terms of the professional services, and then develop a fee proposal accordingly. And historically, because it's professional services, you've got the ability to work with firms that you've already done business with and have a pre-existing good relationship with, so that you don't have to go through another qualifications review process. So that's kind of been our history of work so far. So I don't mean to be evasive on the cost. It's just that I think it's important to make sure we're clear on exactly, you know, do you want to revisit with the judiciary, for example, and just make sure their needs are met? Or are we going to focus predominantly on groups that haven't had a new facility recently? So I think that's the first step, is defining exactly what the scope is. And then we'd provide a fee proposal that we believe is fair for the services.
And that was one of the reasons that that Judy and Jennifer and I sort of, because if we have to go out for all the qualifications again, we're delaying it by, you know, however many months all that will take. So that was one of the reasons that I thought it might be good to talk with White. Because we can move a little more efficiently forward that way, I thought. Plus, them working with McKinstry, I think McKinstry will have and I might be saying that business name wrong, a good knowledge of where we're most lacking in the efficiency departments too. So maybe that will help make it a little more cohesive. So go ahead, Member Butler. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So you're.
Oh, hold on. Number 5. And go ahead.
So we wouldn't need to put that out. I don't remember what the dollar amount is for us having it. There isn't one, Terry? You're shaking your head no.
Oh, no, I think you mean the dollar amount for putting something out to.
Yes.
Okay, I understand.
I thought we had some type of a
He's meaning like a dollar amount.
restriction, you know.
Restrictions on when you have to go out for proposal,
Yeah.
not for
So-
professional service.
So there is none. Okay, that's good to know.
Mhm. Jackie, I'm sorry, I didn't, go ahead.
Members first, that's fine.
4.
So I agree with you. You definitely need to do this facility needs assessment beforehand, because that would be the only responsible thing. We would have to know what we have, what our objectives are before we actually form a plan. I did read your last facility needs assessment 15 years ago. You wrote it. I believe you did it, right?
Yeah, I was involved.
Yeah,
Yes.
I read it all. I read it.
Great.
I'm glad
Most
to have
people
finally
don't.
met you. I've been reading all your words for almost a year now. So I just wanted to clarify that you did say 15 years ago. So really, those facility needs assessments are good for a few years, but certainly not 15.
Yes, so that's why I talk about it being a process. You know, we make a projection. We did a 20-year projection. So I just involved with another county right now. We're trying to do a 30-year projection. You know, as you can well imagine, it gets a little bit more cloudy the farther out you go, because so many things change in such a short period of time. But that's why we find it really beneficial to try to project out, you know, 20, 25, 30 years, best you can. But then revisit that on a pretty regular basis, just to check back and say, okay, what's changed, what's new. Some of that gets picked up in the master planning process for coming up with solutions. But I think in Will County's case right now, because it's been 15 years since we looked at space needs, and there's been a number of things that are pretty significant changes that have happened in the last 5 years. It's good to go back and revisit. In many cases, I think you'll find that groups that have had new facilities built and spaces are probably going to be in just fine shape. But you can check, and then you don't need to do anything.
Generally, would you say a facility needs assessment is usually done every 10 years?
Yeah, probably 10 to 15, somewhere around
Because
there.
I mean, I know with the schools and stuff, there's some of the companies that do this, it's every 10 years.
Yeah, that's like a life safety survey or
Because
something. with
costs
schools.
change,
Yep,
you
for
know, you
sure.
can't tell people that a roof is going to be $20,000 and then expect, 15 years later to be the same. So a new assessment would have to be done.
Correct.
Correct.
And I guess one more clarification too. I'm happy to hear you're working with McKinstry. We have a good relationship with them. We've worked with them. Actually, we've got a very large planning project we're doing in the city of Chicago right now with them, where they're doing the conditions, physical condition side, and we're doing the planning side. So the same kind of partnership to plan. In that case, it's over 100 facilities. So yeah, it's a good group and kind of a good partnership on something like that.
I'm glad to hear that because I had not talked to him about that part of it until just now. So Leader Trenier?
You've got another committee member?
Who?
I don't know, is Steve on the committee?
I didn't see his light on, so I didn't.
Okay,
Oh, did he? And then Jackie, go ahead and then Steve.
thank you, Chair Mueller. I just have a few comments and maybe a question. I thought that the planning process went further out than 2030 in terms of population growth. And I do have the 2 CD-ROMs in my car. And I have looked at them from time to time and actually printed out some of the stuff for other new board members. But I thought it was further out than that. But regardless, I mean, our population hasn't grown as predicted by a long shot. COVID has changed needs, I would say, dramatically in terms of the courthouse. I know a number of the attorneys that I've spoken with are really happy with being able to do court calls via Zoom. And they'd like to see that stuff continue. So I would imagine that our needs at the courthouse are going to change to some degree. I heard you mention 50 to 75-year assets. I'd really like our assets to last 200 years. Granted, they would need upkeep and, some changes and modifications, but I guess I've been to Europe too many times. And I'm going to Croatia to like the oldest Venetian community later this year. So, thousands of years old, these buildings, and they're still using them. So I do remember also at the time we were doing all this, the argument about, and I think this was around the time that member Balich joined the board, looking at green space, just scrap the whole thing, build everything somewhere else, brand new, all in one place, a big county complex, similar to what they did in DuPage. And I know that that was scrapped because we just finished building the addition to the jail and people didn't really have an appetite for building another new jail. One of the things we talked about too was putting a new county building right here on this property, on the north end of the square.
Yep.
Of the block, so that we would have something new on this end of town as opposed to, somewhere else, wherever that might be. I'm still kind of in favor of that idea. This drawing of a new county complex, this is something that I haven't seen before actually until it popped up in the newspaper about maybe 6-9 months ago. Because I already think it's too crowded down there. And while there is a parking lot next door, we already have problems with parking for jurors and, people visiting the courthouse. I mean, we've had conversations in this very room about maybe towing people because they're not parking legally. So I just don't want to add to a parking problem that we already have. I heard you mention adult probation and public defender, and well, I thought we had kind of taken care of that with the purchase of that building at Osgood, but apparently we have a habit of buying buildings and then never using them and just letting them sit there and rot, because that's what's happening with Copperfield and maybe what's going to happen with Osgood. And I thought, and maybe the chair can answer my question, that we owned the old CAC space.
I'm sorry, the one across the street here?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. I believe we do own that. Our
Yeah,
maintenance
and-
folks are in
and I
there now.
haven't heard anything about plans for that,
You are-
nor have I heard anything
Yeah,
about,
okay.
I'm just.
I hear what you're saying, but
Maybe
I
you've-
need to interrupt you and say, these are things we've talked about in this
Yeah,
committee.
No, that's fine.
So,
I'd love to hear what the plan for the CAC is, and then what are we doing with the old morgue space?
mhm.
And what happened to the space of the
Mhm.
coroner's office across the
The
street?
coroner's office?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we can talk about those things.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to do it under this
I can
heading
ask
right
you about
now, but okay. I'll be glad to
But
have
those,
that
those are
conversation
some of
with
my
her.
thoughts and concerns,
Sure, let's see
and,
where you can find it in the meeting.
if we're not building housing, then our population's probably not gonna grow. And we're really not building housing, not really anywhere in the state, so.
Your memory is really good. We did do formal space needs projections out to 2030, but at that time, we got the CMAP projections to 2040. And just as we were launching the courthouse, we tried to adjust projections specific to that project for 2040. And it's interesting. I mean, we're doing the same kind of exercise with a couple of the neighboring counties here as well, that we've seen that CMAP has dialed back their projections for multiple counties. So, I mean, that's an example of, I think, how things have changed. The Zoom court's a good example. I mean, we're working with Kane County right now, and they've been doing a lot of Zoom court, but they're, in some components within the courthouse, they're shifting back to in-person. And a lot of that comes down to, I mean, I guess if there's any silver lining to COVID, that was a little bit more flexibility on the judicial side. But I think what we've seen with different jurisdictions is a little bit of preference of the judiciary, also different types of efficiencies or specific types of cases, juvenile, for example, where sometimes having the parties together in person is a much better outcome to the process. So, I mean, those are some examples of things, like I said, that have changed pretty dramatically in the last 5 years, and why revisiting plans like this can be real beneficial to set and pace for how to go forward.
Go ahead, Mr. Richmond, then Mr. Balich.
Oh, okay.
Since Jim's on the committee, I'll let him go first.
Doesn't matter to me.
I know.
So
You proceed.
I'll admit I've been here like only 3 times now. So I'm going to ask a question, and did we talk one time about going out for RFQ on like that first meeting that I was here, or something like,
I think so.
and was that determined that we were going to do that, or?
Can you refresh my memory, Kim, on the months? Because
I-
I know that we talked about it, and then Jim said, I need more time.
Uh,
And I think we sort of stalled till the next,
Yeah, it's,
but I'll let.
and I
Kim
don't
remember
have
for
it
me.
all. So
Right.
So the committee did have a discussion about going out to RFP and RFQ in regard to this space needs analysis. And in fact, it was then moved to the committee, and the resolution was passed to have that done. So it's on the board, it's attached. This committee has already made that decision, as well as the county board, that it go out for request for qualifications. So it's not required, but that is the process that the board took.
That we set forward. And that is attached, I believe, is that the letter A under number 2 in old business? Okay. Do you see that, Julie? So you can read it there. They attached it to our agenda. It's number 2 under old business, letter A.
So occasionally my old brain does.
No, it does. You're right.
Okay, well,
And so you got it, Julie?
Yeah.
Okay.
It says for an assessment, I'm looking, you said it's for an RFP.
Hold on a second. We had put out, we wanted to have another needs assessment done. An request for proposal, that's a RFP. Got it?
I'll read this.
Okay. Did you have any more questions, Jim?
no, I that's pull my stuff up here. That was it. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're okay. Leader Balich.
Well,
I
Jackie
know we're
kind of
recording.
touched on what I wanted to say, but she didn't go to the extent that I want to go to. We buy property, we have a whole bunch of property, and nobody wants to go in it, so we don't use it. It sits empty. So I think that we need this needs assessment, because if we can't force people to go in, different departments into these things, why the hell have them, right? So we should sell them, get rid of them, put them for sale, or put them for a lease, do something. But it's silly for us to be renting property when we have empty property. And what I'm told is that we're not going to force departments into these things. So at that point, I think it's a prudent thing to do is to sell it or lease all the property that's empty and start making some money back. Because this is stupid. And this facilities thing would show us. It would show us that we have how many different how many thousands of square feet do we have? Right?
Mhm.
And then when we budget at the end of the year for the levy that we fight about, right? The last levy, $5 million, I think the number was for the PACE to update it. Why would we even update it if our people don't want to go in it? And why do we want to buy something and then give Joliet the stuff? Our taxpayers are the ones that are paying. Joliet doesn't get it for free.
Mhm.
So I'm just looking at, we need this study. Whether we go out to bid or we do a professional services, whatever, but we need it. And we got to start waking up and stop being silly with our money and our properties.
Thank you, Member Balich. I think the facility needs assessment needs to happen so we can stop making assumptions about what other people are doing with buildings in the county's ownership. So, because I hear lots of things about what people think are happening, and then when I go check, that's not what's happening. So, I just want to make sure I say that on the record. Did you have something, Member Van Dyne? You look like you want to ask a question. No? Hold on, I just want to turn on microphones. I'm just kidding.
It's,
Go ahead.
I don't have a question. I was just kind of perplexed over here. I just wanted to make the statement that I believe that Pace building cost us $1. So it's not like, some buildings do cost a lot, but anytime anyone wants to offer me a building for $1, I'll take it, so that's it.
Thanks. Okay. So I guess my next question is to Mary. Because of the resolution we currently have, do we need to do something in order to, if we decide we would like to move forward with this potential negotiation with White to hopefully not exceed $250,000 that Mr. Mahoney told us about a little bit ago, how would we go about that in the appropriate procedural way, since we do have something open with that last resolution? Did I ask that in a succinct enough manner?
Yes.
I was putting it together as I was
Just
saying.
answer my question.
Hold on a
rather-
second.
Oh, sorry.
Turn you on. There you go.
Maybe you can just answer my question rather than me looking back through the document. So we've talked about space needs assessments and facility needs assessments. And Jason was going to do which or both?
They kind
They
of
go hand in hand.
kind of go hand in hand, but our focus is probably a little bit more on the space side of things. I mean, if you've got McKinstry working on physical conditions, that would be kind of the conditions assessment side. That's where the partnership would come into play.
Okay, so the resolution you have out is for a facilities needs assessment. And in my mind, they are slightly different.
Okay.
Although I'm certainly not the expert in this at all. In that you're looking at your facilities and seeing if there need to be updates, whether there's adequate space is part of the component, and that sort of thing. And whether or not you have more than enough space in some buildings that could possibly be utilized differently. So I mean, I see them as a little bit different. Part of it is a maintenance upkeep. Is this building something that we can utilize for other things, as well as a space needs study as, I don't know, how many employees are we projecting, department, things like that.
Mhm.
So on the one, you do have a resolution out there.
Mhm.
I guess they are kind of the same as I look
I
through it
just
in
want
my
to make sure
head.
we don't hit a bump later
Um,
where somebody says, this was not worded right, you need to change it, and we're,
Yeah.
I like it to be clean, so.
So, I mean, I guess the question I have for you is, do you want to issue a request for proposals, or was your desire to work with White Company? Because under the statute, the Professional Services Selection Act, if you already have an established professional relationship with a firm, you do not need to go out
For proposal.
for proposals. But oftentimes, government entities want to do that just to see what other possibilities there are.
Okay. Did you have a question, Member Butler?
Yeah, so in previous meetings, I had understood that a space needs was something that didn't require other people, but a complete facility needs assessment did require the use of professionals, and it also encompassed the spatial needs. So what we were looking for was a complete facility needs assessment, which would cover everything.
Okay, and that's what your resolution is for,
Okay,
is the facility needs. But thank you for the clarification.
thanks. So do we need to do anything about that resolution if we choose to go forward with White? Do we need to
I would think
amend
that
it
you would,
or?
I would think you'd vote to rescind that resolution so that
Okay.
it's not out there. You don't want to issue a request for proposals if you're simply going to use the exemption under the Professional Services Selection Act, which is to utilize a firm where you have an established professional relationship.
Okay, so I would need someone to make that motion and we would have to vote on that.
Correct.
Okay. Would anyone, go ahead, Mr. Butler. Oh, hold on. Can we do that since it's not on the agenda? Mary.
What exactly does your topic say for, I don't have it in front of me, for facility
It's,
needs?
uh,
It's just an update?
Review master plan update from White.
Okay. So you can ask, I mean, what you can do is ask that this be moved to the executive committee and ask the executive committee to consider what they want to do.
Oh, hold on, let me turn you on. Mr. Butler, go ahead.
So I would just like to remind everybody on this committee that the two companies that we're talking about right now already have a vast understanding and background on our properties. So I would think that it would be less expensive to have them do it. I mean, the last complete facility needs assessment, which I read through, which was very good and accurate, was done by yours truly. And the other company has already been going through all of our properties, assessing our energy needs and taking in other information. So they've already have compiled information that could be put towards that. That's not going to be starting from scratch. So it seems reasonable to me that these would be the two most logical companies to have do this. So we might not want to, if we don't have to put it, try to get other people, we got the best opportunities right here for us.
Member Butler, that's what I was thinking too. The history that we have with these companies will make this process run a lot smoother, I think, and a lot less downtime for having to relearn all the history, right? I'm sorry.
Yeah, if I may,
Go ahead.
I mean, ultimately, it's your decision on who you'd want to work with, but if I could make a suggestion, correct me if I'm wrong, Mary, I think that as Mary said, because it's a professional service we'll be providing, you have a relationship. I think even with the resolution you have to ask for a request for proposal, I mean, ultimately, we're going to have to
give us a
work with the county executive's office to define the scope and provide a proposal. So I think you could work off of that and just, you could direct the county executive's office to work with us in McKinstry to provide a proposal for the services and clarify the scope. Because ultimately, whoever you select, once you select them, you're going to have to go through a proposal process anyway. So I don't know if that feels consistent with how it was written, but it's,
A little bit. I mean, generally, when the resolutions indicate that they'd like to issue a request for proposals to all the potential.
Right. There's paperwork involved that
and-
is the line of stuff that goes with a resolution like
Well,
that.
and you're asking firms to come back with proposals, and if you aren't going to even really consider them, that's really not a
Right.
fair thing to do
Okay,
to other firms. If you do that, I
Okay.
mean,
I hear what you're
so,
saying.
yeah.
Member Van Dyne?
I think you could another way you could do it is just amend that resolution to, instead of go out for a request for proposals, to work with White, to develop a proposal. That's a different way you could do it.
I just wanted to say that I tend to agree with Dan and you, Meta, and also with Jason's comments as well. When it comes to this professional services agreement, I think it would be fine to just go ahead and go with the two companies that are super familiar with our landscape.
Okay, we can amend this in this committee, right? We don't have to amend it.
No, you
No?
would have to go to county board. That was
Or
a
to
resolution that
executive?
was approved. Well, right. So ultimately it would have to go to county board.
Okay. Does it
Um,
have to go
but-
through executive first, though?
Yes,
Yeah,
because
because we have to
executive,
assign it.
yes.
Right. Right. Okay, and then we can vote on it. Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, do we need a motion then to move this to executive?
Yes.
Then if anyone would like to make that
I'll
motion,
make a motion to move this to executive.
So, and just for clarification, move this, you're not moving the topic that's on the agenda, you're moving
correct,
the
Moving
request.
the
you
request to amend the resolution to indicate that rather than request for proposal, we'd like to,
Maybe just to be cleaner, just rescind the resolution and develop a new resolution to enter into negotiations with White and Company.
oh,
It
hold
would
on.
just be a
Number
cleaner way of
4.
doing it.
So the amendment, the way it's written right now, does not
You're
give,
just getting a vote to say that,
I'm
yes, the
sorry.
entire committee is on board.
Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
so the amendment as it's written right now does not specify who we're going to use, doesn't limit us to using somebody else. I don't know that there needs to be amendment made.
So the current resolution directs the executive to send out a request, and that means to publish widely a request for proposals. And typically our purchasing department or our procurement department will then send out an advertisement. They'll send it to the professional organizations requesting proposals from all the professionals. And
Okay.
it's my understanding that you do not want to take that step.
Okay, I
So I
got you.
think to be cleaner, I think it's just cleaner to rescind that resolution and bring forward a clean one.
Okay. Okay, so,
But you're just asking, and we can make sure the topics are correct on the executive committee. The only thing you need one vote for is to ask the executive committee to consider simply directing the executive to negotiate with White and Company to develop a proposal for a facilities needs, a space needs
okay.
study.
After conferring with our chief of staff, does this make more sense? I'm looking for a motion to rescind resolution 24-72 to executive committee. Rescind, because then it moves it there, because we don't have a vote for this on our agenda. We have to vote, we have to do it at executive, because that's what's next coming up, where it works. Does that make sense? Okay, sorry.
The motion.
Thank you.
To move this to executive committee,
To rescind it.
to rescind it
Okay.
and move it to executive committee.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Can we do a do we need a roll call? Or we did a roll call.
Yes.
Can we have a can some,
Call for previous.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Oh, here's your papers. Sorry. Does, let's see, anyone have any other questions? Are you good, Jason? Okay. Sorry, I have so many papers. I lost the one that told me what we were doing here today. Okay.
Thank you.
Next, moving on, is there any other new business? Okay, public comments? Public comments? Did we have any emails? Okay, no public comment. Announcements and reports by the chair. I don't have any. Do we have a need for executive session? No need for that. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? We stand adjourned until July 2nd.
Maybe play it 9 goals.
No, it takes about 7 hours.